This doctor was very sick at heart. He sewed the three men's mouths together with their asses to create a human centipede during the day in the yard to teach them how to walk. But when they go home, this doctor only alone to give the men to eat pig food. The other two women had to wait. They had to wait until the men finished digesting the food before they could have fresh food to enjoy. This doctor is called Dr. Heiter. Once a skilled surgeon, after retiring with nothing to do, he began to study some sick surgery, sewing some animals together to make a brand new life form. But over time, just experimenting on animals has not been able to meet his perverted psychology, so began to target humans. This night, two women were driving. The tires suddenly do not know what was stabbed, so they rushed to call the towing company. But this ghost place even no signal. They had no choice but to seek help in the surrounding area. But just through the jungle, the sky was pounding rain. At that moment, a single house appeared in front of them, so they walked straight over. But to my surprise, the door was opened by the perverted Dr. Heiter. He saw two women drenched in the rain, smiled and invited them inside. The next moment, he locked the door behind him. After a brief conversation, Dr. Heiter learned that the two were close girlfriends. This fits the criteria for his choice of experimental target. So, under the pretext of going to the kitchen and pouring water for the two, he served the water to them as if nothing had happened after he had put the ecstasy in the water. A few minutes later, Caitlin began to feel disoriented. At this point, Aliyah also felt dizzy. Realizing something was wrong, she tried to crawl towards the door, only to be injected with an unknown substance by Dr. Heiter. The next day, when the two women woke up from their unconscious state, they found themselves lying in an operating room, hands and feet bound, with any struggles proving to be futile. Just then, Dr. Heiter brought back another prey, a man living a comfortable life in Japan, waking up with a confused look on his face. He wondered where he was. Dr. Heiter couldn't be bothered to explain, merely stating that he intended to sew them all together to complete a grand surgical procedure. This way, the leading person would only need to consume a small amount of food, and the waste could be passed into the mouth of the next person. So if one person is full, the other two won't starve. This way, the nation would save a great deal of food each year, and he would gain immense fame. Upon hearing Dr. Heiter's words, Ethan felt sick, and the two women started crying out of fear. Soon, the Japanese man was anesthetized and fell into a peaceful sleep. When it was Caitlin's turn, she despaired and begged Aliyah for help. Seizing the moment when Dr. Heiter administered the anesthesia, Aliyah managed to bite off her restraints and made a run for it. By the time Dr. Heiter noticed, she had already made it to the living room. The main door was locked, so in her panic, she ran into an empty room. At this point, Dr. Heiter caught up and demanded Aliyah to open the door, threatening to sew her in the middle of the human centipede, promising immense pain. Aliyah retorted, "Are you insane? Who in their right mind would open the door for you now?" The knocking suddenly stopped. As Aliyah prepared to break a window to escape, she pulled back the curtain, only to freeze in horror at the sight of Dr. Heiter holding a gun, causing her to panic and accidentally fall into the swimming pool. Then, Dr. Heiter followed her in. He used his gun to force Aliyah to get out. However, Aliyah preferred death over being turned into a human centipede, so she decided to drown herself. But in less than 10 seconds, she couldn't hold her breath any longer and resurfaced. At this point, she wished her captor would just kill her. Dr. Heiter informed Aliyah that her escape had delayed the surgery, so he had decided to sew her into the middle position. Consequently, both her mouth and rear would suffer, and she'd endure a double torment. Then, Dr. Heiter activated the electric roller shutter, intending to force Aliyah out of the water. Just then, a startling thunderclap echoed in the sky and the house lost power. Dr. Heiter was forced to leave Aliyah behind to check the power supply. Aliyah took this opportunity to crawl out, but as soon as she escaped outside, a gunshot sounded from behind, and she lost consciousness, falling to the ground. Upon bringing Aliyah back, Dr. Heiter first removed her knee ligaments, then marked the cut on her face with a pen. He then reshaped the rear of another person to fit the shape of a face. And finally, he removed all the sharp teeth. Just like that, the human centipede was fully complete. Looking at the creation he had crafted with his own hands, Dr. Heiter proclaimed it to be perfection. Even shedding tears of excitement, he even took out a camera to take photos of the three people, commemorating the moment. After this, Dr. Heiter spent his days taming the three people in the yard. In the evenings, only Ethan was fed take food, while the two women could only wait. They would have to wait until Ethan had digested his food to have their share of fresh food. The next day, Ethan couldn't hold back any longer. He prayed with both hands, hoping that Aliyah, who was behind him, could forgive him. Then he excreted. Aliyah had no choice but to consume what was left. At night, they cried pitifully in the cage, especially Aliyah, who had consumed the nutrient meal and couldn't vomit it out. That day, Dr. Heiter conducted a medical checkup on the three. Ethan, always able to eat pig food, was trending towards normal in all health indicators. However, Aliyah was a bit constipated due to the food, and Caitlin, sewn at the end, was worse off. Aliyah's constipation left Caitlin malnourished, and her wound at the site of the stitches was festering. She seemed to be on the brink of death. Just as Dr. Heiter was about to find a replacement for her, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. 2 police officers had arrived, having received a public complaint about a woman's screams emanating from the house. They intended to enter for an inspection, but were met with resistance from Dr. Heiter, who insisted that they were violating his domicile without a search warrant and threatened to lodge a complaint. Seeing that Dr. Heiter knew the law and without a search warrant, the police had no choice but to leave. Subsequently, Dr. Heiter rushed to the basement, intending to dispose of the human centipede, but was ambushed by Ethan, who struck him in the knee with a knife. Dr. Heiter collapsed in pain and was knocked out cold by another blow from Ethan. Ethan directed the 2 women to start escaping. They quickly crawled into a room on the first floor, picked up a table lamp to smash the window glass, intending to escape through the window. However, the sound woke up Dr. Heiter, who bit a scalpel in his mouth and crawled like a snake behind them. Ethan quickly picked up a piece of glass, and the 2 were about to engage in a decisive battle. However, at the critical moment, Ethan backed down, saying that he had lost face living as a human centipede, and used the glass to cut his own neck. At that moment, the 2 police officers returned. They had grown suspicious of Dr. Heiter. The 2 alternately provided cover, conducting a cautious search. They quickly found bloodstains in the basement. Then a gunshot echoed. One officer hurried upstairs to find his colleague. By the time he found him, his partner was already dead in the swimming pool, with Dr. Heiter aiming a handgun at him. With the sound of gunfire, the officers was hit repeatedly and responded with his own fire. Both men ended up dying in the shootout. In the end, Ethan died from excessive blood loss. Caitlin was barely alive due to Aliyah's prolonged constipation, leaving only Aliyah stuck in the middle, struggling painfully. So, who do you think is the most pathetic out of the 3? Type your results in the comment section.